Good evening and welcome to this special one-hour Vote 2014 edition of Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. It's Election Day, and while the votes haven't all been counted, we're getting a good indication of who will lead the state for at least the next few years. Time now to talk about the winners and non-winners in the 2014 election. Here to sort it all out, consultant Bob Grossfeld of The Media Guys, Arizona Republic columnist Bob Robb, and consultant Steve Roman from First Strategic. Bob, Bob Grossfeld, I'm going to start with you because you work with a lot of Democrats, and yes, a lot of Democrats didn't do all that well, or they're not doing all that well. So what happened out there?
Well, I think the Democrats decided it was time to let the Republicans have everything, and let's see how they can do. It's a tsunami, and if I had to pin one thing underneath all of that, it's Obama. We had legislative candidates running against Obama. And I think it underlies all of the campaigns to some extent.
Were Democrats smart to run away from Obama?
I don't think so. I think they had an opportunity to run based on the record that the administration's put together, at least as a way of fending off the Obamacare, Obama Ebola, Obama, you name it, Obama immigration. They had to have done something, and they just didn't do anything.
Bob, what happened out there? Big night for Republicans.
It was, and I don't think it was Obama, because if it was Obama, you would expect Republicans to do better in the three contested congressional races where it would be most relevant. And right now, Democrats are leading in all of them, while they're getting shellacked in virtually all of the state races. I think it is simply the built-in Republican advantage in registration that gets accentuated by a much larger Republican turnout in off-presidential years. In 2010, Republicans were 44% of the electorate. In the early ballots, which were over half the votes cast, they were 43%. And if they have a 10 percentage point plus advantage over Democrats in turnout, then they don't have to do very well with independents. If you've got over 40% of the vote in your own back pocket with your own party adherents, then you don't have to do all that well with independents to get over the top.
As far as the tsunami, as Bob called it, did you see this tsunami coming?
I think from the statewides, we were looking at it from the statewide simply because of what Bob said, turnout. When you have on the early ballots that were turned in, and as of yesterday, Republicans had 105,000 vote lead over Democrats. So if you have 105,000 more Republicans voting than Democrats, and you had 24% that were independent, and I think independents are probably split because I'm not so sure when we say independents, you're necessarily saying moderates. You're saying independents, and they go both ways. I think when you have 105,000 vote lead, you're going to win.
Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the results here. We'll start with the governor's race, where Doug Ducey has a considerable lead over Fred Duvall. I want to mention real quickly that we have the percentages. For some reason, the media outlets, ourselves included, some of us are not getting the actual raw numbers here. Now, Bob, that's big for you. You like to see the raw numbers more than the percentage numbers, but we got the percentage numbers, so I hope you're okay with this. And the percentage run, Bob Grossfeld, this is not close.
No, it's not. And I think many of us saw this coming months ago. The Duvall campaign just never evolved. And the Ducey campaign launched against Duvall, I think it was the night of the primary, certainly the day after, and they never stopped. And he just didn't have a chance.
Did Ducey win this? Did Duvall lose this? A little combination of both? What do you think, Bob?
I think a combination of both. Ducey executed in both the primary and the general election just a disciplined, flawless campaign. So he did quite well. Duvall had the registration and turnout disadvantage that he needed to overcome. And he needed to provide the electorate a reason to depart from their default choices in these kind of races, and I don't think he ever developed that rationale.
What do you think, Steve?
I think Ducey ran a flawless campaign, and I think Fred Duval did not run the best of campaigns. I think his ads from the beginning, they had Grant Woods in them, not him. Some people thought Grant was running, and he didn't. He ran nothing in the primary. So he started in the, people didn't even know who he was, so he had to deal with name ID starting in the general, whereas Ducey, even though he had high negatives based on what was going with him in the primary, people knew who he was. People didn't know who Fred was.
We talked about that during the primary. Was that bruising Republican primary going to hurt the eventual winner? Eventual winner being Doug Ducey. Doesn't sound like it hurt him at all. It may have helped him to get the name out there.
Oh, it certainly helped with his name ID. And he wasn't exactly running against the strongest field that the Republicans could have put together. But the story can't be written without talking about the money. I mean, just the enormous amount of money, 2-to-1, 3-to-1 over Ducey, or Ducey sympathizers over Duval. I mean, there does come a point where the best strategy, the best minds, the best of everything can't hold that amount of money back.
Do you agree? I mean, if Fred Duval had run a pitch-perfect campaign with that money, with the inherent voter registration, could he have won?
I doubt it. I think that it was a Republican year, and you had the huge registration and turnout disadvantage, but there's no question that any shot that he had got drowned by the money differential. Because of the outside spending groups. Ducey had no resource allocation issues that he had to deal with. He could spend his money however he thought was best. And I think probably Duval was $2 million shy. He actually raised quite a bit of money for a gubernatorial race, $3 million, which is pretty high clover for governor's races. But I think he needed at least $2 million more in order to get enough of his message across to have a shot. If he had the $2 million, it would have been closer, but I don't think by a lot.
Last question on this. Will Democratic candidates get that $2 million or whatever it is more when people see these kinds of results?
We're going to have to look at I think the whole paradigm of what's happened, because I agree with Bob. Money, I mean, you're talking about $10 million, of which, the majority of that didn't come from the candidate. What does that do to elections going forward, and how do people deal with that? People are now going to know that there's going to be independent campaigns that are totally legal. That's anonymous speech, that you can come in and do that. How do you deal with that? And right now, it benefited the Republican candidate. Going forward, are the Democrats going to learn to deal with that and use it as well?
Are you going to learn to deal with that, Bob?
Yeah, now all we have to do is find the Koch brothers on the Democratic side who have that amount of money to pour into places. And despite the fact that there are gazillionaires who are Democrats, there's just not that much money floating around. Duval should have gotten money from the Democratic Governors Association. He had worked with them. Their whole purpose in life is to get Democrats elected governor. They pulled out real quickly, shortly after the primary. And so that sent a message to all the other funding groups that don't play in this one.
Interesting.
But I would make an argument that there is Democrat money out there on a national basis. It didn't come into Arizona, but it's clearly in a lot of other states.
It didn't come into Arizona because this was nationally a Republican-leaning year, and both for the Senatorial Campaign Committee and the Democratic Governors Association, the money was spent defending incumbents that were endangered.
Let's get to the Secretary of State race. Terry Goddard, the Democrat, against Michelle Reagan, the Republican. And again, this was one where some folks thought that the name recognition, the familiarity with the Terry Goddard might mean a Democratic victory. Bob Grossfeld, what happened here?
I think this is one of the races where the turnout and the Republican advantage, I think, show up better than most others. It's kind of a neutral race. People aren't getting into the minutia of the conflict between the two candidates, even after watching debates. And so at that point, you're looking at two well-known names. And that served Michelle Reagan quite a bit over the years.
If Terry runs again, I think he needs to change his strategy with respect to debates, because he clearly won the debate against Brewer, he clearly won the debate against Reagan, and he got swamped in the election. So maybe next time he needs to throw the debates.
Yeah.
Or not show up.
Please don't say that. Don't say that. But again, I'm asking a similar question as to the governor's race. If Terry Goddard had run a better campaign, and did he? I mean, is this just one of these years where if you have a D by your name and you're running statewide, you ain't going to win?
I think it largely was, except for the congressional races. And I think Goddard lost track kind of early on in the campaign, where he seemed to want to run on the social issues rather than the Stop Dark Money campaign that he started out with. But he closed strongly on that message. So it's a low budget campaign. You're not going to have you don't have enough money to really waste. So you can't blow your campaign too much, because you can't conduct much of one to begin with. I wouldn't blame, unlike the Duvall campaign where you can see opportunities lost, things that he could have done better. I don't know that I see that in the Goddard campaign. I think it was just a Republican year.
What do you think, Steve?
Well, he did better in the debates, but remember, the governor was out there supporting Reagan, and there were a lot of ads out there from the governor and former governors that were doing that. And if you take a look at the ads, and remember, debates are one thing, but most people are not looking at the debates, sorry to tell you, they're looking at the TV ads. And the TV ads clearly, in my view, were stronger on the Reagan side than they were on the Goddard side.
Are we going to see Terry Goddard run for office again, Bob? What do you think?
I don't know. It's hard to say no, because he keeps coming back and running for an office. I don't know what's left. Treasurer?
You think, will we see Terry Goddard run for office again? I mean, this one has to hurt for him, I would think.
Ted, I don't know. I mean, Terry has a strong motivation to be in public service in elective office. And he went through a process of deciding between Attorney General, Secretary of State, Corporation Commission. He ultimately, I think he got squeezed out by Democratic Party forces out of the AG's race. But he actually convinced himself that there was things he wanted to accomplish legitimately as Secretary of State. Whether he will come to a similar epiphany for some other race in the future, I don't know. But it's certainly where his heart is serving in elective office.
And you mentioned the Attorney General's race. Let's get to that panel if we could. Mark Brnovich, the Republican, against Felicia Rodolini, the Democrat. And again, Rodolini lost a very close race to Tom Horn last go-around. She's losing again this go-around. It's not close. And a reminder now, when you see at the bottom of your screen the zero, those are the raw totals that we and some other broadcast facilities and reporters are not getting those from the Secretary of State office. We are getting the percentage numbers, not that raw data. It is coming through on the Secretary of State's website, so if you want to go there and check it out, please feel free. But we've got the percentages, and Steve, I don't throw any number you want up there. That's a convincing win for Mark Brnovich.
He's got I'm looking, he's got like a 70,000 vote lead, actually. So yeah, it's a convincing win. I think that Felicia Rodolini was planning on running against Horn when she got into this race, and thought that she was going to be running against a guy who had a lot of issues. Brnovich didn't have any, was much more of an unknown. And when you have that going on and you have a significant Republican turnout the way you have, then the enthusiasm on the Republican side, that's hard to beat.
Was there enthusiasm on the Democratic side for Felicia Rodolini?
Absolutely. As well for Goddard and for Duvall. I think one of the reasons that we can sit here and say that the Republican turnout was so massive is that the Democratic game plan from the beginning was a combination of the PEVLs, the permanent early voting list, and a ground game at the end. And the ground game just didn't produce what it was supposed to produce, which is a lot more votes.
Was the ground game there? Was the effort there? Was it so? It was properly planned, but
Poorly executed.
Yeah, yeah. As far as the attorney, you mentioned Terry Goddard got squeezed out of this race. Would Terry Goddard have won this race?
I don't think so. I think this was just a Republican year. But I do think that the Democrats misread the 2010 race and how close Rotolini came. In that race, I think there was a large sore loser component among Andy Thomas supporters who were not willing to vote for Tom Horn in the general election. I don't think that there were that many even supporters of Tom Horn's that were that much disappointed that he didn't make it. So there wasn't the sore loser Republican vote opting out of this election.
What do you make of this Attorney General's race?
As I say, I don't think it was a complete surprise. I think that Rotolini was planning on a stronger campaign, and a lot of people were supportive of her. But as I say, when she ended up not running against Horn, it changed everything.
Okay, so what do you make of the Superintendent of Public Instruction race?
That one, let me see where we stand right now. Right now, Diane Douglas is ahead, and I have to tell you, that's an issue in my view of, it's a down ticket. People are, there was a lot of ads against Diane Douglas. She basically hibernated during the campaign, which a lot of people thought was her best strategy. It turned out to be a pretty darn good one. And she took advantage of the Republican turnout.
What happened there, Bob? Well, and we should mention, this is not over, this particular race.
No, this one might take a while to
but still, I mean, I think a lot of eyebrows are raised when they see those percentage numbers.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure they were paying that much attention. Certainly, I mean, among Democrats, he was probably the single best candidate. I mean, we couldn't build one that would be better than him. He was running a good campaign, and Douglas just sat back and didn't do anything and rode the Republican wave.
The business community that supported David Garcia needed to step in much earlier and much more extensively with an independent expenditure campaign on his behalf. The reality is that they got that effort going too late, and it wasn't strong enough. This is one that I think probably could have been won even despite the registration and turnout advantage. It was just too little, too late to give Garcia the support he needed.
And in fairness, it's not over yet.
No, yeah,
It's really close, so anything could happen.
Indeed.
At this point. But it is, I think, to a lot of people, a surprise that at this point she's ahead.
Corporation Commission race, 4 candidates running for 2 seats. Republicans ran as a team, and that particular team is winning. And how against the Democrats. You see the percentage numbers there. Again, the raw numbers, we're having some trouble getting out of the Secretary of State's office regarding broadcast affiliates. But any way you look at it, Bob, this is now again, in this particular race, there was a lot of talk, a lot of chatter about APS money propping up the Republicans, and you don't want this and you don't want that because you don't want the regulated monopoly pushing for these two. I don't think many people paid attention to that, or they didn't seem to care.
You know, one of the questions was there going to be a backlash effect? There wasn't in the primary, there wasn't in the general. But I don't think this story is over. I believe that there is a good chance that the Corporation Commission will require APS to disclose what it spent on Corporation Commission races this cycle. Tom Farese, one of the beneficiaries of that money, has said that he would support such a required disclosure. This is something which, while it didn't affect the outcome of the election, I think has troubled a lot of the political establishment, and that this is not the end of the story.
Didn't seem to trouble all that many voters, though, Bob. What happened here?
No, I think that's part of the disconnect between all of us and the voters. It would have been hard to miss the association between APS and Corporation Commission race if you were paying attention. And I think most people are just going about their lives, and by the time it got around to making a decision, they were just, begging for Tex Earnhardt to get back on the air. I mean, there was just so much, just dirty, filthy campaigning that they tuned it out. And at some point, if you tune out that, you're tuning out everything. And so the APS connection, I think, was just completely lost.
Let's not forget that the two winners were probably pretty good candidates, and in comparison to some of the other candidates. So I mean, there is a little bit of that too. I'm not disagreeing that the if there was the APS money, we don't know, but if there was, that clearly it had impact. There was money there, and the money made a difference. But you got to have, in most cases, you have to be a fairly decent candidate.
I think Jim Hallway was a good candidate, and I don't think Doug Little was. So I think this is the Republican registration and turnout advantage, and in order to make APS's contributions potentially or suspiciously suspected an issue, you had to have money to invest in saying, here's who's funding the other guys. And the Democrats had no money and no one else stepped in.
And real quickly, you mentioned perhaps more scrutiny on APS and its dealings here. Will Forese and Little be watched ever so closely to see how they handle that issue?
There's no question. And I think the integrity of the commission as a whole has been put into question. And I think even though the commission is completely controlled by Republicans now, there will be a desire to expose what happened in order to try to remove, to the extent possible, that taint.
And I agree with that, and I think that these folks may have to go out of their way to, vote the other way in certain cases, so they can say, I'm not being controlled by the corporation that people think funded.
Before we get to congressional races, Bob, is the corporation commissions going to be similar to like the treasurer's race, where it seems like if you're a Republican, there's almost a built-in advantage?
I think there may be now. There hadn't been. You could have run for a corporation commission based on some environmental issues or deregulation or making sure that people weren't paying too much on their utility bills. And now it's just become, something far, far afield from that. And as long as you've got major corporations in back of people, we'll never know what they really think.
All right, let's get to those congressional races, and we'll start with Congressional District 1, Ann Kirkpatrick, the incumbent, the Democrat, facing Andy Tobin, House Speaker Andy Tobin. This was one, Bob Rob, that I think a lot of people thought would be a little closer than what we're seeing now as far as these percentage numbers are concerned.
Absolutely. Kirkpatrick also has a 6,000 vote lead, which is pretty substantial. I think the assumption was, since Arizona had two of the most hotly contested swing elections in a Democratic year, that you would see Republicans pick up at least, in a big Republican year, you'd see Republicans pick up at least one of the seats. And it doesn't look like they're going to pick up any of them.
With Republicans doing so well statewide, and yet in this race, and we'll look at some of the other congressional races as well, Democrats doing well in those, does that suggest those Democratic candidates are especially strong?
It maybe to some small degree indicates the power of incumbency. And I think that there's an element of that, although what's going on in this district, this number hasn't changed. It's been at 104,000 votes for a while, I think. So I don't know if there's more to come in, but I thought you had said that's only about a third of the vote potentially. So we'll see, and I'm going to say Bob's favorite thing, we'll see what happens when the Navajo vote comes in. But that will, if that's the case, that will only help Ann Kirkpatrick.
Did Ann Kirkpatrick, did Ann Kirkpatrick win this, or did Andy Tobin lose this?
I think she won it, but Tobin gave her a couple openings to to shoot at. He had a very rough primary, and he and his colleagues, each one of them took a turn stepping in it. And that doesn't help your credibility going into a general election. But the biggest single thing is Kirkpatrick and Barber, the two who were on the endangered species list, were the beneficiaries of a lot of money. That's where the money went from outside forces into the state of Arizona.
You agree with that, Bob? You think the money made a big difference in these races?
There was also a huge amount of money coming in on the other side. So these are campaigns in which I think both sides had more than ample resources to get their messages across. In the case of Barber, I think you still have a bit of the Gabrielle Giffords halo effect. And the ad that she cut as a testimonial to his character and representation of the district, I think was very, very powerful and had an influence there. Andy Tobin was a poor candidate. He didn't come from the district.
But why was he a poor candidate? I mean, what did he just not campaign well? Was he just not prepared? What happened out there?
Andy's sort of a diffuse force, which worked for him as speaker, but he really doesn't have the ABC discipline of being a candidate. And I mean, that is a district where authenticity means a lot. And buying a cowboy hat and putting it on your head and standing by a border fence does not a cowboy make you. And so I think he suffered some authenticity problems, and you saw that in the Republican primary. He barely squeaked through the Republican primary. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce saved his bacon in the primary with an outside spending campaign.
And that was a surprise that election night. We talked about that. It's like what happened to Andy Tobin. If he ran a better campaign, would he have won this?
Well, first of all, we don't know that he's lost it yet.
That's right.
That one is still pretty close. I think that, once again, you have an incumbent congresswoman that's there, and you've got a district that I think can go both ways. So turnout from that perspective, I don't know what the turnout was. I think it was going to be tough. I think a lot of people thought Tobin had a really good shot.
Mitt Romney won this district in a presidential election. A Republican should be able to win it in an off-presidential election with more of a Republican-leaning electorate.
I think there were also if I can.
Sure.
Had Tobin not had a primary, he might have been in much better shape than he was going into this one. Kirkpatrick has been working her butt off in that district.
Her boots off.
Her boots off. No, I don't think she ever took the boots off. But she's been working very hard, doing a lot of grassroots and constituency work, and that has a benefit as well. And that's where the incumbency, I think, comes into play more than anywhere else.
And we had mentioned Congressional District 2, Ron Barber and Martha McSally. If we can go ahead and take a look at those particular numbers. Ron Barber does have a lead. Not, again, it's, as we like to say, it's not over yet here. We got, that's only 26% reporting. Are you guys got an update on that? Because it seems like we should have more. Of course, that is, that is Southern Arizona.
Yeah, remember that's of same-day ballots reporting. You do have the early ballots, which are more than half the vote, that are embedded in these figures. So it's not that there's 75% of the vote out there. There's maybe 30-40% of the vote.
And we're waiting for our database to update as well. But it does look like Ron Barber will. Are we going to?
The size of this vote for the election is my biggest surprise. The size of Barber's win is. I thought McSally would probably win, but I thought that if she didn't, she would barely lose. And the size of this surprises me probably more than anything.
Are we going to see Martha McSally, you think, again? This is twice now.
I couldn't tell you. I mean, anything could happen down in Tucson. She's got a great resume, and she's I was about to say she's a pretty good candidate, but she hasn't won twice. So
Let's get to Congressional District 7 now, and we have this up here because there will be a new member of Congress here after all these years, Ed Pastor retiring, and Ruben Gallego leading the way over 3 challengers here in CD7, leading the way, I guess, 74% of the vote here. That's he basically can pitch a tent in Washington now, can't he, Bob? I mean, this is his district as long as he wants it.
Or buy a condo, you know? He's going to be making some good money. Yeah, this is his race as long as this seat, as long as he wants it and as long as he does a good job.
And will he become a power broker as the years go by? Is this going
Absolutely.
to be?
I think he's already there. He's been spending time in Washington, as all of the freshmen do, and he's going back there and he's making friends, and that's the start.
Compare and contrast to Ed Pastor.
Pastor was content exercising power over the things that he cared about in Washington, D.C., and serving his constituency here at home. Gallego has a broader ambition. I think he wants to have statewide influence, and I think it'll be interesting to see whether a rivalry develops between he and Raul Grijalva for leadership of the Latino Democratic power brokers.
Interesting. There was some talk for a while of Kyrsten Sinema running in that district. That talk didn't last very long. She stayed in CD9, and as the results show tonight, she will be staying in CD9 for at least another couple of years. Steve, as far as this race is concerned, Wendy Rogers did not appear for the debate. Was not all that vocal, not all that active as far as the campaign was concerned. Kyrsten Sinema, I mean, 2 years ago we were talking like she was the most endangered species out there. I mean,
And I think she's one of the best candidates we've seen. I think she's a phenomenal candidate. I think she's done well in the district in terms of the last 2 years in terms of her votes. I think that she's charismatic. I think she's run some of the best ads of any of the ads that have been out there. They've actually cut through the clutter in some cases. And you put that together, and I thought she ran a great campaign.
Kyrsten Sinema, CD9, well ahead of Wendy Rogers. I think if we can get that panel up, that'd be great. There was some, what was the deal with the Democrats pushing Powell Gamble? Was that really necessary, do you think, in this particular? What was that all about, Bob?
I don't know. It's one of those things. If you've been around a campaign headquarters enough, and there's coffee cups everywhere, and you're just trying to think of things, somebody comes up with an idea. Let's push the Libertarian, and a lot of good that did.
Bob, again,
Didn't hurt.
we've talked about this before, that Kyrsten Sinema was supposed to be fighting for her life every 2 years, which is one of the reasons CD7 looked so attractive to her. Republicans have sent out now, in this race, not necessarily the strongest of candidate. Are you surprised by that?
In part, particularly this year, which was shaping up as a Republican-leaning year, and if you're going to defeat an incumbent congresswoman, the first time she's up for re-election is your best opportunity. But Republicans have also sort of reappraised this district and how winnable it is. Republicans outnumber Democrats slightly, but independents are the plurality in the district. And there's every indication that while independents are tough to characterize statewide, the independents in this district do seem to lean left. This is a district which Terry Goddard won against Jan Brewer for governor in 2010. So Republicans are less inclined to see this as much as a swing district, despite the registration figures that would seem to give them at least a fighting shot at it.
Let's get to some legislative races. As you can see at the bottom of our screen here, we do have a ticker showing races. We do not have the raw numbers as far as the votes are concerned. There's a problem coming out of the Secretary of State's office on that. We do have percentage totals, though, so keep that in mind as you watch these go by. A couple of races of note. Senate Legislative District 6, Sylvia Allen and Tom O'Halloran. Interesting race in that we could, and it looks like we perhaps, well, it's still pretty close, but we very well could see an independent, Steve, in the legislature. Do we have any idea where he's going to caucus? Is he going to find a hallway somewhere, or is that?
Well, he's an independent that used to be a Republican, and so one might think that if he's allowed to caucus with the Republicans, that he might end up there. But you know, we'll just have to wait and see how that turns out. I think that right now he's been holding his own in terms of he's got about an 800 vote lead, I guess, but that's been holding, and you know, he knows his way around the hallways. Mm-hmm. He would know where the cubby holes would be to hide
Bob,
or to sit.
You surprised that Sylvia Allen, a pretty conservative person, did not win?
At this point, yes. Knowing the district, she's a good fit, a good fit for the district. Halloran is the great white whale that the Democrats were hoping would just swim right into their Democratic caucus and help them have some more influence down at the legislature. I don't think that's going to happen.
He could be something else in the water if he tries to go into the Republican caucus.
Now, one of the questions, I think, is whether Andy Biggs will let him in. But if he holds on, it means that the true Republican caucus is down to 16-14, and it dramatically increases the shrunken moderate faction in the Republican caucus in the Senate. This is a surprise to me because Republicans have a huge registration advantage. And I didn't think just having an I next to your name would be sufficient to get the independent vote. But it appears as though he's put together a coalition of independents. Democrats actually encouraged their candidate to drop out so he would have a one-on-one shot at it. If he holds on, this will have, I mean, given what the state faces in terms of the budget deficits and the difficulty of negotiating something to resolve that, even with a 17-13 caucus, you reduce that effectively to 16-14. And Halloran was a spender. He was not part of the Republican orthodoxy when it came to holding the line on spending and taxes. You've got a really dicey environment.
Or a doocy environment.
Or do you have a situation where people prove they will vote for someone with an I next to their name? Are we going to see more independent candidates, or is this just a unique situation?
I would put this a little more in the unique category. I mean, this is a independent that is a well-known Republican previously, and they have voted for him in the past. There's a difference there than somebody who is an unknown quantity coming in and saying, I'm an independent.
Senate District 23, we have this up here because it was definitely a noisy race, John Kavanaugh and Paula Pennypacker. And there was some concern that Kavanaugh could be in trouble because the business community wasn't all that happy with him, et cetera. Bob Robb, no trouble at all.
Well, no, the business community tried to shoot Kavanaugh in the primary, and
it's a painful place to be shot by.
and missed pretty spectacularly. He actually ended up winning that race pretty handily, and I don't think they were inclined to waste their money twice on trying to get rid of Mr. Kavanaugh.
Another race of note, this in the House. This is a Legislative District 9, and this one is in southern Arizona. Ethan Orr, the Republican, going up against two Democrats here. Bob, this is nip and tuck all the way. Are you surprised by this?
You know, I'm always surprised when an incumbent is not doing particularly well. Or, you know, in fundamentally a pretty liberal district, seem to have been casting out bait over the last several months, up to and including proposing legalizing marijuana. I'm sure that wouldn't have gone over in the caucus very well. But the two Democrats were, especially Steele, were very, very strong. And you have, I've never gotten Randall's name pronounced correctly, but Frizzy.
Good enough for us.
Yes, sorry, Tucson. I apologize for that.
What do you think about that, Steve? I mean, was that a surprise to you that Ethan Ord, obviously not over yet?
Not over yet, but no, I actually, as I look at this, it's more over, I mean, it's going to be tough to come back from where he is right now. And a little bit of a surprise, but I agree with Bob. I can say I agree with Bob, and it'll take care of both of them. When he came out and took on some of these more liberal or moderate causes, he was sacrificing some of the Republican base that he needed to hold on to, and able to do that. So I think I understand what he was trying to do, but it didn't seem to work out.
Is that similar to what Bob talked about? Democrats running away from Obama might have been a mistake. Do you think he may have made a mistake running against or running away from more of the base down there, or did he have to because of the district?
That's I don't have the answer because it's a weird. He's a Republican in a Democrat district, and it's a more of a liberal district. So I understand what he's doing, but you go one way, it's a two-edged sword. You get cut the other way.
Bob, the House Legislative District 28 race with Eric Meyer, Shauna Bullock, Kate Brophy-McGee, this one being watched as well. And it looks as though, McGee obviously looks to be ahead, but it looks as though Eric Meyer is going to be able to hold off Shauna Bullock. Are you surprised by that?
Well, I'm not, because he's defied the registration disadvantage in that district twice before. And the Democrats always allow him to run a single shot campaign. He never has a running mate. But if Orr is defeated, that will mean that Myers is the only one of 60 members of the Arizona House of Representatives to come from a district other than from the party that has the registration advantage.
Interesting.
So he will be a highly unusual figure as we've sort of returned to normalcy in terms of party registration. And if Orr is defeated, then once again you've got a reduction in the size of the Republican caucus down to 34-26, with enough moderates to keep the majority from operating. So once again, this is Myers succeeding or potentially failing, makes it a tough place to operate in.
And Meyer may end up being minority leader as well, I think. So
What makes him such a good candidate in that district that doesn't favor his party?
He works hard.
It's just that simple.
It's that simple. And when you get to these legislative races, that's the key ingredient. I mean, there's money, sure. There's activities, you get volunteers, you do all of this jazz. At the end of the day, the candidates have to work very hard in order to get the votes. There's the exception now and then, but I don't think that's the way it is.
Before we get to the propositions, we've looked at some of these key legislative races. Obviously, the others are at the bottom of the screen there. As far as Governor Ducey dealing with this makeup of a legislature, you seeing fireworks? You seeing kumbaya? Something in between?
Well, I think Ducey will make a far greater effort to work constructively with the Republican leadership than Jan Brewer did. She often issued edicts and threatened thunder and lightning if what she ordered was not done with dispatch. That's not the way Ducey is made. He'll try to work constructively, but the result is very narrow margins and the balance of power in the Republican caucus held by a small number of moderates. I think it's a very tough legislative environment for the governor to operate in, particularly given how huge the stakes are.
How long of a honeymoon period do you think, Steve?
that's a great question. I think he is going to be a tremendous governor. I think he's been planning for this for some time. I think he has been forming relationships and will, I agree with what Bob said, he will get in there and work closely with the leadership. He's not going to come in and tell them what to do. I think he's going to try to lead them. I think the honeymoon we'll have to see, because the problem he has is he's got $1 billion deficit that he's got to deal with. He's got to figure out where to come up with that money. And there's options that probably people haven't thought of, but there's going to be all kinds of funny business going on as that all goes along. And when that starts happening, suddenly the honeymoon might be over real quick, depending on if you're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
What do you think, Bob?
Well, what time is it? I'd say the honeymoon is going to be over in about an hour and a half.
I see.
He's got, as I think we've all referred to it, he has mammoth problems to deal with. And frankly, he was just so good. He was robotic in terms of his ability to stay with talking points. I'm not sure anybody knows what he thinks, other than those he's confided in. And probably our friend from the Arizona Republic knows much more than any of the rest of us. But how he is going to deal with the legislature, I don't know. We haven't seen any evidence of that.
All right, then let's move ahead to the proposition, shall we? Prop 122 is the rejection of unconstitutional federal actions. And this one seems to occur every so often in various forms. Bob Robb, this one is really, really close, but yes is winning.
And it was a different proposition. It wasn't a proposition in which Arizona was declaring that it was going to take over all the federal lands in the state or boot the federal government out of the state, take over the regulation of the environment. It instead set up a process whereby the state could declare that federal action is unconstitutional and the state wasn't going to spend money helping the feds do something that was unconstitutional. Well, that's an authority the state already has. So this didn't generate the funded opposition of the other ones, because I think at the end of the day, it's just sort of some procedural nonsense that won't have much substantive effect.
Was this a toothless proposition, Steve? I mean, is this the kind of thing that no one fought because no one thought it was going to bite them?
I was against it because I really didn't understand why it was necessary, and I still don't. But it looks like we're going to have it.
And do we know? Do we know now what we're going to have?
I'm not quite sure I know what we have, but I do believe. Yes, I don't think it's going to make a big difference whether we have it or not.
Is this going to be one of these things, Bob, where someone's going to decide that something's unconstitutional, or we're not going to fund it, and all of a sudden we're going to be back in federal court and we're all going to be fighting, and Jon Stewart's going to be making fun of us? And
Oh yeah, we're going to spend a lot of time in federal court if anybody acts on this one.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, because the power that it ostensibly gives the state legislature not to spend state dollars enforcing federal law is a power the state already has. So it's not like saying, EPA, go away. We're going to regulate the health of our air and water. If we don't want to spend money, right now there's a lot of environmental programs where the state administers them with some state involvement in dollars. We can decide not to do that anytime we want, and there won't be a lawsuit. It's just that the federal government will come in and enforce those laws directly rather than they being state administered. And the business community will go berserk because they prefer state regulate. Yeah. They prefer dealing with state regulators than federal ones.
Prop 303 is the short-term version, is the right to try proposition. The right to try investigational treatments for those with terminal diseases, experimental drugs not approved by the FDA. This one won big time.
Great. It did, and I don't think it's a surprise to anyone because the way you just described it makes a whole lot of sense to a whole lot of people, that people ought to have that opportunity.
Yeah, but yet when we had the debate, Bob, there were those who were saying, first of all, this is yet another one of these we don't want the federal government on our back kind of a thing because it's the FDA, A. And B, you have everything from false hope to the idea that folks who might be able to get good treatment going by way of X are now going to go down the path of Y, which is not well known and could be. There were a variety of doctors out there who didn't think this was such a swell idea.
Right, right. And, I would not want to be the person to tell someone who is terminally ill, you can't take that drug because the FDA hasn't approved it yet. I don't know anybody who would want to be in that position. Ergo, you get 78% of the population basically agreeing with that, or at least of the voters. I think it's very similar to what we had with medical marijuana. It was a convincing argument. Why would I deprive somebody who is suffering under cancer or some other debilitating disease? Why would I withhold something from them that's marijuana, like no big deal?
Yeah, the no side didn't have much of a chance on this one, did they, Bob?
They did not. Sort of the mystery of this proposition was why we had to vote on it. It's not a constitutional amendment that requires public approval. It's a statutory measure that the legislature could have enacted directly. So I have a feeling that we didn't really vote for this so much as to bring it to Arizona, because the legislature could have done that directly. We did it so that it can be a lobbying point in trying to convince other states to do it. 75% of the people of Arizona supported it, and so your state should adopt it as well.
And isn't there a federal, again, from the debate we had learned there's a federal way to get this kind of activity done, get the okay to use non-FDA approved, and it's almost the exact same procedure. You got to get your doctor approved, and you got to have a terminal illness, et cetera, et cetera.
But you have to go through a federal program to do that.
A little longer of a process.
And I mean, this is a national effort that the Goldwater Institute, which developed this concept, is pushing. And I think they both want to see states adopt it and also see the restrictions at the federal level loosened.
Proposition 304 looks to hike state lawmakers' salaries. Can we guess?
Poor guys.
Yeah. That ain't going to happen, is it?
It's just such a shame. It needs to be, in my view, needs to be raised, but in my view, it never will be.
What about the get what you pay for argument? Is that ever going to stick?
It's a great argument, but it's not one that certainly resounds well to the majority of the electorate.
Bob, what do you make of these numbers?
I'm surprised they're not bigger. There's what, 32% of the population going, yeah, we got to give these poor people more money. And everybody else is going, no way. And so there you go. I'm surprised. I thought it'd be in the 70s.
What happened to you get what you pay for, Bob?
Well, I don't think anyone's convinced that going from $24,000 a year to $35,000 a year will purchase large increments of improvement in governance in the state of Arizona. So I don't think that's the argument in favor of it. I think the argument in favor of it is fairness. We simply ask these people to do more than it's reasonable to ask them to do for that amount of money. But so long as the legislature is widely perceived as doing a very, very poor job, there's no point in even having this discussion, as we've proven since the mid-1980s, which was the last time one of these was approved.
Yeah, it keeps coming up and it keeps getting stomped back down. County ballot here, 480, the health systems measure. Explain exactly what we're talking about here and why this won by so much.
Well, it's about $1 billion that's been raised through a bond initiative to pay for the rebuilding and building of the new county hospital. There was a whole lot of money that was available to the S side, and they used it well, and it looks like they're going to be building a new hospital.
You surprised, Bob, with the way the election returns? We've seen a lot of Republicans winning, a lot of fiscal conservatives winning. You look at something like this, you surprised at the margin of victory?
No, mostly because I was aware of polls that showed it winning by this amount. It'll be interesting to see how the school bond elections fare. I think that might be a better gauge as to whether anti-tax sentiment carried the day or had a voice. I think that the notion of having a safety net hospital and clinic system, because it's more than just the hospital, resonates. The voters voted to establish the district in 2003. So they had previously decided to establish the district, give it property tax authority for operating purposes. The county hospital is extremely old. It's not as configured as one would like in terms of acute care beds versus psychiatric beds. So there was a case that if you're going to be in this business, you need to improve the facilities.
Last numbers we want to look at is the Phoenix Initiative 487. This is pension reform. Bob, the No won this. Are you surprised by that?
No. There's a standard rule of thumb. If you can't beat it on the issues, you beat it by confusing everybody. And I think there was a whole lot of confusion about what would this do. Does it hurt fire and police officers, or does it not? How much is it going to cost? We don't know. And you get enough of that going, people just go, we're going to vote now.
I was going to say, Steve, you mentioned pension just in particular. Half people don't even know how to find out what their pension is. You talk about pension reform at a government level, I would imagine eyes would glaze over relatively quickly.
It does, but there's been a whole lot of discussion for a number of years in the Republic and a variety of other places as far as what's going on with pension, the pension system and how it's impacting, will impact each and every one of us. But I think that Bob's absolutely right. There was a lot of confusion in terms of how it was put on the ballot, the wording that was used, and people took advantage of that in terms of the campaign against it. And you also had the firefighters and a number of the other early responders who came out very strongly against it, and they have a lot of sway with the electorate out there.
What'd you make of this final tally, or what looks to be a final tally here?
I think Bob is correct. They didn't try to defeat the proposition. They didn't try to make the case that making the switch to defined contribution programs for new workers is a bad idea. They instead said that it had all sorts of unintended consequences. So I'm not surprised by the vote. I'm a little surprised by the margin.
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong defeat, and there was money on the pro side. However, the issue's not going to go away. The unfunded liabilities in our public employee pension programs are a ticking fiscal time bomb. They will have to be dealt with. So this issue will return in one form or another.
All right, we'll have to stop it right there. Gentlemen, great discussion. Good and out. It's just great to have you here as we try to sort through all this. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Wednesday on Arizona Horizon, we will continue our analysis of tonight's election as more of the results come in, and we'll actually have a non-political story. We'll hear about an organization that connects older adults with nonprofits that can use their skills. That's at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us on this special 1-hour Vote 2014 edition of Arizona Horizon. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.